Now remember, our objective is to have work in progress in the shortest time frame possible. Now that we've calculated work in progress days, let's look at how to improve work in progress. There's two elements for improving work in progress. The first one is simply accelerate the rate at which you complete your work. Get stuff done quicker. Start it sooner, finish it quicker. The second one is how well do we play the game? And I'm going to explain that to you in a little bit more detail in a moment, but that's the second element of work in progress. There's two things to bear in mind when looking at work in progress improvement before we look at those two elements we just discussed. The first one is where focus goes, energy flows. In work in progress improvement, this is the area of all the areas in working capital where if you focus the most energy on, you will get the greatest results. So where focus goes, energy flows, and it's you as a business leader communicating with your team around these strategies for business improvement and work in progress improvement. The second one is making sure if there's any variations on any jobs, that they get communicated and actioned straight away. So a variation would be, let's say you got a project for $100,000 and you cost that project at $75,000. So you got a $25,000 gross profit. And then there's some alterations or some additions or some upgrades, and that will take that project to $110,000. You've got to make sure that that $10,000 difference is invoiced as soon as possible. So let's dig into the details a little bit further around those two core elements of how fast do we do the work and getting it done sooner, and also how well do we play the game. How fast do we do the work? And this is moving into an area of speciality where there are specific people and specific advisors, consultants, and also yourself internally within your business can focus on. This is process engineering and process improvement. I've got an anecdote to share with you around process improvement, and as much as this is challenging your conventional wisdom around how you do whatever you do in business. So a construction company was building houses, and the average time from when they got on site to when they handed over the keys was around about 150 days. So that's around about 5 months, give or take. And we wanted to look at a way of how to improve the speed at which they start the house through to completion. So we set the unrealistic expectation of what if we were to complete the house in 30 days. Now, naturally, everyone in the business went, there's no way in the world we can complete a house within 30 days. But it's not so much around, are we going to do it in 30 days? It's looking at all the individual steps involved in building a house or completing whatever your project is in a shorter time frame. So they got all the people involved at different areas of the business, through to operations, through to sales, through to finance, and all the roadblocks that hold up a job, all the things that can be potentially done better to get the job done quicker. Now, after a couple of weeks of reviewing that entire process and defining what their new way of doing business was going to be, you can imagine they had significant improvement. Now, they didn't reach the 30-day target, but they almost cut it in half how long it took them to build a house. So it went from around 150 days to around 85 days. So 75 days would have been a 50% improvement. They were just short of that. But you can imagine what an impact that has on your business's cash flow, your performance, your culture. So really look at process engineering as step one of how fast do we do these things. The second element of how fast we do things is don't start until you have everything. One of the worst things in any type of business is pick up and put down. Look at a service business like a law firm or an accounting firm. If you were to start someone's work when you have 75% of the information, there's a good chance you're going to have to put it back down, pick it back up again, and the speed of what you do things is just going to be inhibited significantly. So don't start until you have everything. Even if that means in a larger project, let's use a house example again, is you might not have all the bricks on day one, but you need to have a surety that the flow of supply is going to be there to make sure that your workers can keep working on a consistent basis. So they're the two core things around speeding up the process. Looking at your engineering, looking at your process engineering of how we do things, and don't start until we have everything. So the first area we looked at for work in progress improvement was around our processes. How we do the projects, how we do the work that we deliver to our clients. The second element is how well do we play the game? And this is looking at our internal processes and internal communication around jobs. Let me explain this a little bit further. Remember, the goal that we've got is to invoice the client as soon as possible, so it then moves to debtors, so it then moves to payment in the swiftest and most efficient way possible. This strategy internally is all around one word: communicate, communicate, and communicate. You need to have all the areas within your business communicating on an ongoing basis to make sure you are invoicing as soon as possible. So, for example, on some projects, think construction, think law firms, think any sort of project-based business, there might be specific landmarks you need to hit before you can invoice the next stage, what is often referred to as a progress claim. How well does everybody in your business know when those progress claims are due to fall? And then one step further from that is, when is the client going to pay the invoice? So let's use an example. In a construction company, they have to put their progress claims through at a particular point in the month, which was the 25th day of the month. If they didn't put it through by the 25th day, they would then have to wait for another entire month to then hop on that cycle of invoicing. So they made sure that for all the projects relating to that client, they had it up to a certain landmark that was predetermined and pre-planned around making sure that they invoiced by the 25th of every month and got as much as they possibly could completed and invoiced. What they did in this circumstance is, at the start of every month, they looked at all the projects they had on the go, all the progress stages that they were at, and how far out they were from completing it. So they would map out their month in terms of where they deployed resources, depending on when the clients would accept their invoice. So there's firstly the goal of just doing the work as quickly as we can, and then the second element is how well do we play the game, and the game is dictated to us by the clients. So making sure that our behaviours of when we do the work is lined up with when we're going to get invoiced. There is no point doing work today on a project that you already know contractually you're not going to be able to invoice that work for 2 months' time. But if you know that you can hit a certain landmark by the end of this week and you can invoice 25% of the project, you should really focus your energy on that part of your work and that part of your pipeline. So bringing this to life in your business revolves around consistent meetings with your team. And that includes operations, that includes finance, that includes sales and marketing. And as we said earlier, where focus goes, energy flows. If you know where every project is at and have people accountable and responsible for it, and clearing it from WIP into debtors to then payment, you'll get everybody singing from the same hymn book. The last point I just want to reinforce around work in progress is variations. I know I mentioned this at the start of the video, but variations can easily get lost in the work in progress process. So make sure that if there's any adjustments and variations to a project, that needs to be communicated immediately within your team to make sure the finance team invoice for it, it's allowed for in your costings, and it moves out of work in progress as soon as possible. Because what you don't want to happen is you do all your invoicing for the job as per usual or as per the project specs, and then you find out at the end, hey, there's another 20 grand, 30 grand, $200,000 we need to invoice as a result of variations, and in effect you've carried that as WIP that entire time. So make sure in your internal communications, variations are just as much a part of the journey as the how we do our work and how well we play the game. So in summary, work in progress. Our ultimate goal is to invoice the client as soon as possible. That is what good work in progress management is for the purposes of our working capital. And we do that by looking at our processes to get the work done as quickly as we possibly can while maintaining our quality. And then how well do we play the game? Communicate internally to make sure that nothing is missed in the work in progress process, and also you're invoicing as efficiently as possible, capturing all those variations.